Hey, happy 4th, everybody. This presentation is about the history of the Micmac of Eastern Canada. So I covered it a little bit last week, but I have to recap for this week. And the lore for the Micmac, everything comes down to Glooscap. Glooscap is the main ancestor. It is because of him that, the tribe exists. It's because of him that the nature is the way it is in that area, why the animals exist there, how they exist, and what they do. Everything comes down to the decision making of Glooscap. He lives in Nova Scotia with his grandma, Nugumi Kisulk, who is his nephew, and Nikanaptepskewik, who is his mom. And it's the dynamics that these four have with the animals and the nature, from what I'm able to read, that determines the values of the Micmac. So, historical overview. The Micmac believe themselves to be the very first culture of people in Eastern Canada. It's actually in their legends that Glooscap created the 7 historical districts of the Micmac from sparks that he sent through one of the great council fires. Sorry about that. And it's important to note that it's verbatim in the Algonquin legends that there were no Indians here then, only wild Indians very far to the west. So they don't believe themselves to have evolved from Western tribes or any migration. They just, boom, out of thin air because Glooscap deemed it so. The Micmac exist. And, of course, the other nations in Eastern Canada have their own origin story. And it's important to note that in the 18th century, these other tribes in Eastern Canada all maintained an amicable relationship with the Micmac. They formed the Wabanaki Confederacy in the 18th century, and they remain friendly today. So, religion versus science. From the articles I've read from tribespeople and other scientists who have studied the tribe, basically the claims that religion makes can be agreed upon by science. However, the process in which they get to their conclusions can be very different. So, religion claims that the Micmac are the Aboriginal people of Eastern Canada, but that they were created out of thin air. Science would not agree that they're created out of thin air. That is most likely, archaeologically speaking, that they evolved from migrating Indians from the west. And they're able to prove that through the tips of spears and the bones that they can find in Nova Scotia, and they're able to prove that they have, one of the oldest and most documented Clovis cultures in all of North America, and that it dates to about 11,000 years ago, according to polyandry. So they can agree to disagree on how it got there, but bottom line, it is most likely that the Micmac were the first people to ever inhabit that area. And it's also important to note that science and religion can agree that they want the ecological relationships between humans and nature and everything in nature. They want it to be optimized. However, religion goes about it a different way than science. So, their Algonquin language doesn't have a word for absolute time. Like it's complicated to explain. Like they have words for day and for year and for youth and adulthood, things like that, but they don't have a word for goodbye, for instance, because there's only really one time period that the Micmac believe they exist within. There's no time after that. So there is no goodbye. That goodbye is like the end. It's, that last slide. So they don't have a word for goodbye, because nothing should be able to exist after that. There should be no reincarnation. Whatever happens, happens. And so you want that to have, whatever happens in your life in this time period, you want it to be good. You want it to be optimized and to really enrich you. So religion is more concerned with the quality of time, not the quantity of time, because there's no name for that. But of course, in science, you have metrology, where everything can be quantified. In English, we do have a word for goodbye, and so that's that. And as far as the negotiation of science and religion goes, from what I understand from all these various articles, the Micmac acknowledge the importance of science, but they also can negotiate that with their legends and with the stories that help shape their lives. So they understand that without science, they probably wouldn't have that special classification in Canadian law that, grants them those areas and that grants them their special benefits as the First Nation. But they keep those stories because in them are really important lessons. And so they may not agree, they may not think today that beavers evolved out of thin air, but they can agree that whatever happened with that beaver and the story and how it interacts with the moose, that there's something to be learned from that. So there's critical thinking here, and so both things can exist simultaneously, and they don't, even though they contradict each other, they're not competing, for placement as far as, I guess priority or precedence. And there's an important saying in Mi'kmaq that's Misino Ma, which I don't know what that means verbatim, but it basically is about, making, basically what it means as far as the article, I'm able to decipher from the article, is that you need to be able to try to have the best relationship you can with the things and the people that surround you. That whatever that is, it's going to determine what your reality will become. So it's a little bit like a karma mantra, as far as I'm aware. So, and then that's what's most important to them. All right. So until next week, let me know questions, comments, criticisms, all of that. I can't wait to see what everybody else comes up with. And again, have a happy 4th of July.